Walt, it was another busy week in the autonomy markets. And once again, this week, I hit the road. This week, I headed to Houston to go on a journey up to Dallas where I witnessed Bot Auto go fully autonomous, no human in the cab, delivering a commercial load from Houston to Dallas. While Bot was busy preparing for their commercial launch, Aurora announced a expanded partnership with Hirschbach. But then the most interesting thing that happened, Uber CTO put a post on X that, I'll say it frankly, was taking a shot at Waymo. Interesting signals there. Let's start with Bot Auto. What do you make of the 231-mile fully autonomous launch?
So you were in the cab of this truck for 230 or 231 because I was in a Kodiak truck, as you know. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the most comfortable ride to sit in one of these trucks. And you were in there for 230 miles?
I was not in the truck. I asked, the insurance would not approve it. And for clarification, there was no human, no individual with a CDL, no supervisor, nobody period in the cab, completely humanless.
Are you sure there wasn't someone hiding in there down below, like holding the steering wheel at all? Did you check in the cabin before and after, like as a magic trick type of thing?
I did. That's why I have the inspector hat. I looked in there and I shut the door and made sure nobody was in there. So fully inspected, inspector approved.
So that's kind of crazy. I think that is probably, in terms of highways, like the first time we've seen like an 18-wheeler with literally no one in the cab at all.
That's correct. And what I witnessed was impressive. And I want to highlight for the audience, Houston is the land of 40 minutes. Everything is on a freeway. It's amazing, the sprawling metropolis with no zoning laws. This Bot Auto truck left from deep Houston. This was not in the woodlands. This was from deep Houston. Had to get through the Houstonian traffic before basically hitting the open freeway. And when we hit the open freeway, there's a lot of traffic late at night. It was a very complex journey.
Was this the first, or this is the, not the, I mean, let me rephrase this. Was this the first time ever that they've had no one in the cab, or the first time that they did it commercially, or the first time that they happened to show someone other than themselves?
This is the first time that it's ever been done without a human / an observer actually in the cab. And this was a commercial paid run, which we did independently verify.
I mean, that's a good honor for you to get that. That's crazy. Where was Governor Abbott? Shouldn't Governor Abbott have been there checking this out?
I'm unsure where the governor was, but it was an honor to be there. And it goes into the work that you and I have done, and I do with Road to Autonomy with Rob Grant, is that we get access to these things. And we're very thankful that we can present this to our audience to show them truly what's happening there. We're on the ground. That's what we do.
So in terms of Bot Auto, like, which is not a public company, what does this mean in terms of, like, I mean, obviously a huge milestone, right? Massive. Like, what's next in terms of them commercializing this and starting to actually book revenue off of these rides?
So that ride was revenue. I do not know the number it is. The next thing to look for, and this is based on my conversations with the management team, that this was at night. You will next see daytime operations, and then I believe that you will see Dallas to Houston, perhaps followed by other lanes, and look for an increase of more and more fully autonomous rides to expand.
I feel like you should have brought like a drone or something to like circle around the cab as it was cruising down the road. I'm guessing the cab was so high up that you couldn't see people reacting to the fact that there was no one in the driver's seat.
Because I was in a vehicle behind this, you could not see any human reaction. But if you did go by the side, which we did, you could tell clearly that there was no human in the cab. There was no human in the driver's seat because the windows were not tinted. I want to highlight that the windows were not tinted. And we will be releasing a Road to Autonomy field report next Tuesday because we filmed and documented the whole thing. And Bot Auto will be releasing a 4.5-hour fully unedited video showing everything as well next week.
I think I'd rather watch your video than the 4.5-hour unedited video. I think I might skip that one. No offense to Bot Auto, and look forward to your Tuesday reveal. But that's amazing. That's clearly a major milestone, right? I mean, how many we talk about this all the time. The very few number of companies, cars or trucks alike, that have trucks on the road, no driver in them, and in this case also generating, obviously, revenue, at least on this particular ride, that is a rare occurrence, right? A lot of these companies that get a lot of press, they're still like a safety driver or someone sitting there. But yeah, I mean, that's obviously a good milestone. So I guess congrats to their team and congrats to you to see it firsthand. That's a feat.
Thanks. It's really great, and it's been a really good 2 weeks for us because the week before this, we were in the Permian Basin with Kodiak, where they're operating fully autonomous, no human in the cab for paid operations. To me, if you look at what I saw in the Permian Basin, which that will be released on May 17th, that video, and what we saw with Bot Auto is a clear indication that autonomous trucking is soon to have its Waymo Robotaxi moment, where this technology is about to scale with no human in the loop. It's coming. It's going to be closer than we think.
I'm always what's next though. So let's get those things scaled up and generating revenue, right? Get people buying them. But that's obviously a good milestone. Let's switch to another player in this space, Aurora, who had their own press release this week with Hirschbach, which I believe does like chilled goods or something, or a carrier, like someone that takes, I guess, frozen or cold goods from point A to point B. So they purchase trucks, and then they have their own drivers, I suspect. They did a 500 truck commitment with Aurora. It's an MOU, not a lot of details. It says starting in 27. I'm not sure that implies all 500 are going to get delivered in 27. I don't know if given the number of trucks that Hirschbach has, that would be a pretty big percentage of their fleet. Again, we don't have those details. And I don't think there's an OEM, like an actual truck selected. So what were your takeaways from this announcement? Got a lot of buzz. It is the Aurora, as many people know, is a public company. Stock was up, I think, like 15-20% at one point on this announcement.
Hirschbach specializes in reefers, not reefer madness from the marijuana smoke, but reefers to remove refrigerated goods. I read the press release several times. A few things stood out to me. We, as you said, no details on who the OEM is, and the fact that it was non-binding. And if you look at the number, that would be roughly 15% of Hirschbach's fleet. So I would ask for where are the more concrete details on this? Is it a positive? 100% it's a positive, but it'd be nice to get more details. And we always harp on the details here on Autonomy Markets.
I mean, I feel you on the details, but I'd rather have this, to know about this as it progresses, and then not. I mean, obviously Waymo had their own press release with Toyota last year, talking about an MOU with something with Toyota for private vehicles. We haven't heard anything about that since. I suspect that we're going to hear more details from Aurora as things progress here. My other question, I guess, is like that's a lot of trucks. Again, the 15%. Who knows if they're happening in 27? Like, how many do they buy? Like, how many does Hirschbach, whatever it's called, how many do they buy per year? And if it's like incremental to the regular truck purchases, do they have the type of balance sheet to be able to fund this? Or do you think there's going to be a financing partner that ends up being part of this?
What I think it goes back to is more questions and more details. I don't have enough insight on Hirschbach to give you an answer on the balance sheet. It just seems based on 15% of the fleet, it's going to be a very, very large, significant number.
Okay, so we have Bot Auto with literally no one in the cabin. We've got the Permian Basin, literally no one in the cabin. We got Aurora. Okay, they got a guy there because it's PACCAR. Our friends at Volvo, I think, hopefully will start delivering. And I see tweets from Sasko on this a lot. So or things on LinkedIn. So looking forward to seeing those trucks on the road. And yet here in California, we have a congressman by the name of Khanna. I'm sure many people are familiar with him, that tweeted this week, "I stand with Teamsters. We do not have planes without pilots. We need drivers on trucks for safety, edge cases, and inclement weather. AI should be for the people, not just billionaires." So I don't really quite get the connection here. I actually quote tweeted this, like, well, I'm not sure what this has to do with billionaires. Like, autonomy is for us all to save lives on the cars, 10,000 of roads, but also in your own state. I seem to see a lot of stuff on Twitter about people that are given licenses to drive trucks that then crash those trucks because they don't sleep or they're on drugs or whatever. Like, so of all states to talk about this, for him to say that and then somehow like relate this to some like social war of money when autonomy is about, again, saving people's lives and and making rides cheaper. I mean, you look at some of the quotes, that even going back to what Aurora said in their press release with Hirschbach, about the routes that they want these autonomous trucks for. It just seems like completely disconnected. And again, one of these states that's going to limit technological development, even though it saves the lives of their citizens.
Politics. There's no other way to describe it. It's politics. Trucking is a dangerous job. If you look at the wonderful work that Secretary Duffy's done at the U.S. Department of Transportation, there are individuals, hey, guess what? Public data, a lot of them got their CDL in a scrupulous way through the state of California. Why don't you start enforcing the laws instead of attacking the quote-unquote billionaire class when they're the one who provide the jobs? It is a clearly out of touch, and I got to give a shout-out to Jason Calcanis and the All-In team. They've done a really good job breaking this down with Khanna and his shifting policies, and the All-In team even invited Congressman Khanna to debate, which he declined. So All-In, hopefully, if you get the congressman on the podcast, ask him about the changing narrative.
I just don't get the connection to the billionaires. What do the billionaires have to do with any of this in terms of autonomous trucks? It literally makes no sense, but it's like, hit a button that resonates with people. It's crazy. Let's move on because I don't want to spend more time with this nonsense. Uber and Hertz, they have a deal this week. Hertz is going to be basically providing, this is look, on this podcast, I think we alone have continued to push the importance of what I call the third or maybe fourth leg of the stool for autonomy, which is these cars need to be serviced, right? And so Hertz is going to be the partner for the neuro relationship that exists with Uber. Look, when you think about all the Uber relationships that are happening, like when you look at the press, you're talking about looking in the details, like this neuro one seems to be the one that gets getting managed the best. I do worry a little bit about Lucid as the partner. I mean, we need more people buying, I think, EVs to support Lucid and maybe Rivian as well. With gas on the rise, maybe we get some of those purchases there. But this was definitely, I think, encouraging for that relationship. But what do you make of Hertz in the context of other options out there like Avis or all the stuff that you do when you go on the road every week and look for these depots?
I will tease to the audience, one of the partners named here, I will be visiting an operational depot next week. So stay tuned for that. I think it's a really good move for Hertz. Gil West, who's CEO of Hertz, former COO of Cruise, now that he's starting to get that business shaped around it's a good move. It's you want to say it's coming full circle because in the early days of autonomy, this is when Waymo was just ramping up Chandler. All the autonomy companies that were competing with Waymo at the time all had a rental car partnership. So I think that it's a really good sign if you want to say it's coming full circle because rental car companies know how to service fleets. They know how to charge. They know how to do the inspections. They know how to do if there's drug paraphernalia in the car. All the things that have to be done to truly operate a fleet at scale, they know how to do that.
I like how you throw the drug paraphernalia. I mean, look, yes, they do. It might be at a different pace. I think we're definitely excited to see what FlexDrive can do, which is owned by Lyft. And there's other companies out there that, have been early Uber partners that haven't impressed as much. Market's still wide open here. Look, at the end of the day, this is important. Like there was some stuff on Twitter this week because Uber announced this basically new thing where you get your Uber driver, they can pick you up a coffee or some food. And everyone's like, oh my God, I can't believe you'd have food in the back of the cab and someone might, get sick. Like, well, that's what these service centers are for, right? What happens if it's in an autonomous car? Like the autonomous car sees that something happened because there's a camera, or maybe the next passenger reports that something happened. And then the car self-drives itself to the Hertz, to the Avis, to the FlexDrive, wherever it is, and it gets clean and gets sent back out on the road, which happens to like any taxi service or black car service. Like that's what happens. And like you probably charge the customer for that and probably make some margin on it in the process. So like to me, this is, again, so I applaud actually Uber and Dara's adding of that, of linking Uber Eats and trying to use his ecosystem, of assets at Uber to do it. If there's pushback from the drivers, like, okay, good luck, driver, because guess what? Autonomy is coming for you, and the autonomous companies will have no problem with customers eating or getting food put in their cars, ahead of their trip.
You're right about the revenue streams. We don't know how it's going to go, but there are going to be multiple revenue streams there. Another really important thing to point out there is that rental car companies such as Hertz, Avis, Six, they all have prime real estate adjacent to airports. And why is that important? If you look at it from a service perspective, the vehicle, this is in theory, could get to the airport a lot quicker, leaving the Hertz rental depot at the airport to pick the person up than coming from a depot far away. So there's a lot of strategic advantages to working with a rental car company outside of just the potential services that they offer. It's also strategic locations of the real estate that they own.
I mean, you love the airports. I respect that, and a lot of the ports or whatever the areas where the cars are stored that we've identified thus far are typically located close to the airport. Like if you just look back on our past videos of that. In fact, last week, that when you unveiled that, the Tesla filing for the private charging station, I think it was, I don't know if it was by an airport, but it was out and large, like many charging things. But the other thing that these rental car agencies have, I don't know if they own them, but like when I rent a car, sometimes if I'm in a city, like I don't go out to the airport to rent the car. Hertz has locations, as all do these rental cars, like in the cities that have places where the cars are also cleaned and charged. And I think ultimately, and we've debated this back and forth, on Autonomy Markets, like where do these service centers are located? Do you always want all of these cars going back to this like central location, or do you want like smaller areas throughout the city that maybe in some cases Hertz and Avis have already upgraded the power for and have charging capabilities that would be needed for autonomy? So it's not just, to me, the airport real estate, it's also those locations. I don't know if they own them, they're franchises, but there is branding for these rental car companies in a lot of those locations.
You bring up the very valid point. I call them satellite depots. And if you look at the filings that we uncovered for Tesla, one's to the northern region of Phoenix Metro, one is to the south. And they are to the east of the airport. So you could say satellite hubs. And if you just look at the locations of Hertz and Avis, they have, if you want to call it, the motherships at the major international airports, then they have the satellites around. And we're starting to see that same model from depots that we've uncovered. If you look at Miami with Waymo, there's a depot by the airport, then there's a satellite in Wynwood. And if you look at Waymo in Dallas, we've been there too. There's satellites surrounded, and then there's in the commercial area, there's a more formal depot. So if you want to call it, this hub and spoke model is going to emerge, and the rental car agencies already have that infrastructure. And you could say perhaps they might have a better advantage of getting power sooner because they've been established in that community for longer than a new operator who might be entering it.
I mean, they may already have the power there because they were, leasing electric cars, at least for some time. I think some of them have kind of ended that, but that was a green option, at least that some of them have. By the way, Grayson, the other issue is like, we know in California, people have complained about Waymo's kind of circling around. There's been like white papers claiming, there's going to be all this excess traffic in a market as the autonomous cars are sitting there in some of the lower hours rather than having somewhere to park. Well, maybe these depots that Avis, Hertz, or whoever have are also locations just for the cars to kind of park for a while and get out of the regular traffic of the streets.
You know what you just did? You hit the nail on the head, so you're going to get a clappy hat for this one, Walt. The areas, the satellites where Hertz, Avis, Enterprise operate, they're zoned properly for commercial use already. The zoning's done. Clappy hat for you for picking up on that one.
Oh, we'll see, but we haven't seen much of Avis in Dallas with Waymo. So again, burgeoning market. We're still looking for interesting companies that are going to benefit here. One of the companies that we've had a hard time even talking to, but we've found their locations and been able to evaluate them is Avomo. Avomo is formerly Moove, and they have a different Moove, and they own part of this company, but what happened to them? Like what is going on with the Avomo, which is an Uber company that they don't control, and their partnership with Waymo?
We don't know. We don't have details, but what we do know is if you go on Avomo's website, you will only see 2 depot locations in the United States listed: Atlanta and Austin. Well, why is that important? Those are both the hybrid Uber Waymo markets. You do not see any other markets. They do not have an active social media presence anywhere. And then furthermore, where's Moove? Is this a sign that Uber is moving away from Moove? No pun intended. And the reason I bring that up, because Moove is clearly bear hugging or trying to deepen the relationship with Waymo, and yet they're not coming up. But we need to put this into perspective here. Uber is an investor in Avomo, and they're an investor in Moove, and now they're doing a deal with Hertz. I'm trying to figure out Uber's strategy here.
Well, Uber's strategy is always to, spread it around, split it up, diversify it, fragment the market so they're not overly reliant on one party, and hopefully, or in their hope that someone doesn't come and kind of aggregate that market up and become an aggressive counterparty to them if they're successful in autonomy. But that's the game plan for them. But given I'm not sure, at least in this segment of the market, I know Moove does other things, that they have enough traction that you really want to spread it thin already and bring Hertz into the game this early. But, who knows? It's still early stages. It's definitely to seed the market. I mean, the other, kind of overriding thing here that I think ties Avomo together to all this is the Uber. That's a market where Uber, or you have to get a Waymo on an Uber app, and it's going to an Avomo, which is partly owned by Uber, the service station. Hopefully I didn't botch that in people's brains. That is precisely the market that we think there's been some issues. And then this week, on that same kind of topic, which Grayson, you have been the most vocal person, bar none, in terms of questioning this relationship between, Waymo and Uber. I've been more tempered. I'm like, wait, Waymo's announced these markets. It's still possible that they bring Uber in. That has not happened. So I've been kind of shifting to your bucket. And what do we have this week? We have a tweet by the CTO of Uber saying, scary Waymo moment in San Francisco today. It overtook a Muni bus in the wrong lane at a signal, didn't stop, and aggressively tried to squeeze between me and the bus. Had the bus driver and I not steered away, this could have been a serious incident. Big fan of AVs, but perception does not equal judgment. Edge cases matter. So you have the CTO of Uber basically dunking on Waymo, who is their primary autonomy partner. It is the only car, I think, maybe WeRide, the only car that you can book on the Uber app and have no one in the driver's seat. Let's say in the US at least. So, what is going on with this?
It's a sign of the times. And the fact that this post on X has not been taken down over 48 hours now and is still live as of right now is a sign of the deteriorating relationship. And perhaps it's a sign the relationship's over, or it's a sign of absolute frustration, or perhaps this individual is lashing out because the relationship is coming to an end. But partners don't do this to partners in a very public form, which is X. It reinforces everything that you and I have discussed here on Autonomy Markets about the deteriorating relationship, which I have very publicly said is on the verge of divorce. This is another sign that goes into what we've been saying for months now.
And we're not talking about a market GM in an autonomous market or someone not that there's anything wrong. Those people are all valid people, but this is literally the CTO of the company tweeting this. It's kind of wild that it's up and it stayed up. And I'm noticing that other people are noticing. Finally, again, Grayson, you've been talking about this for months and quarters, and now all of a sudden I'm seeing on social media oh, maybe this doesn't look so well for Waymo. Really? At least acknowledge Grayson for having been on this for quite some time.
No, it's truly, truly amazing the amount of talking points that emerge from this podcast that get regurgitated and not credited back to the hard work that we do, including the field work that you and I get on planes and go and visit this to try and uncover things for our audience here on Autonomy Markets.
Is what it is. We will survive, but I don't know. We'll see what the next step is. I guess we'll just have to keep watching Austin to see what happens there. Meanwhile, Waymo, going back to, this is like the Pat Grayson on the back podcast. I have to get my own clappy hat. Back on February 28th for a long time podcast. That's not even a long time podcast. For our more recent podcast listeners, Grayson Brulte said the next city for Waymo will be Portland. And you think he gave it a time frame and it's actually ahead of schedule. But what's interesting, and by the way, you were right. The next city, it took some period of time, which is kind of interesting in its own right. Like, Waymo cranks out a lot of new developments, but like they haven't really announced the new city since, before February 28th. And the very next city that was announced in terms of, hey, we're getting into this market was in fact Portland. Now, what I said on that podcast, and I need to bring up a list, but the one after Portland is Cincinnati. And let me just give you a list. And what, just to back up, what list am I talking about? I just looked at like the 35 most populous markets in America, and like, where is Waymo not today? Riverside is still not there. That's fine, whatever. I think they'll get there. It's California extension. But beyond the kind of Portland and Cincinnati, after that you've got Kansas City, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Cleveland. They've already done Nashville, which is smaller, and there's other markets like Buffalo, which have been announced, which are smaller. But of the Cincinnati, KC, Columbus, Indianapolis, Cleveland, what do you think is going to be next? Or maybe you have another city that's not even on that list.
Kansas City post World Cup. But when I say Kansas City, I do not know if it's going to be on the Kansas side or the Missouri side.
I mean, come on. You can't do one side or the other, right? You have to provide. What do you think? The Waymo's just going to stop dead, right? When it's going to be like the Dukes of Hazzard. Once you cross the line, it won't work.
Well, let's look at this. Let's not forget the Kansas City Chiefs are moving to Kansas from Missouri. The World Cup will be on both sides of the river. Most of the staging is going to happen on the Kansas side, with the games being played in Arrowhead on the Missouri side. Perhaps it is the first two-state market, and Waymo operates on both sides of the river.
Well, we'll see. That's adding two states. I still consider that one market. You're on the tape for Kansas City. I'm going to say Cincinnati. I got your back, Cincinnati. If we have any Cincinnati viewers out there, I'm hoping Waymo comes to you. If you're in Cincinnati and you happen to see a Waymo driving around, send me the picture. That'll be an early sign. Hopefully we get this info faster.
So is this, are you hinting that you're a fan of the Big Red Machine, or you're a Cincinnati Reds fan? Is that where you're going with this?
I am the only thing good that came, well, I shouldn't say that. The only thing that I like that came out of Cincinnati is Pete Rose, because he got the Phillies a World Series. So thank you for Pete Rose.
Okay, all roads go back to Philadelphia, because I dare not bring up the Bengals.
I'm a big Joe Burrow fan, but beyond that, no, that's fine. I want Cincinnati to get autonomy. I think they deserve it. Can we move on to our friends at Tesla? Because since you're down in Texas hopping in autonomous trucks, did you have an opportunity to hop into a Tesla?
I did. And before we move on to that, I will say the CVG airport is one of the best managed airports in the country. Incredibly well managed airport that is pro autonomy. Yes. So when I was in Houston,
do you have a friend? I think we need a full disclosure on this. Do you have some friend that works at that airport, that runs that airport? What's going on with that shout out to the Cincinnati airport?
No, so it's really interesting. If you look at the history of automation and autonomy, the CVG airport was one of the first mid-market airports in the United States to embrace automation and autonomy. And historically, it's been one of the earliest adopters for putting on tarmac and off tarmac autonomy experiments and pilots before any major U.S. airport has done it.
Okay, so for our Waymo listeners, Grayson literally just gave you the talking points. So you go into that city, you announce like, hey, you guys, all the things that Grayson just said, just crib his notes on that. And this is why we're coming to Cincinnati. That's a great PR launch and supports why Cincinnati should get the next Waymo announcement, not Kansas City.
There you go. So it's a great airport. Let's go back to Houston now, Space City. So we're going to go to Space City. Yes, I was there. Huge shout out to David Moss, sir. Thank you. I was texting with Mr. Moss here, and he gave me the location of where to get the unsupervised Robotaxi. And lo and behold, where do you get it, Walt? At the Tesla Service Center in the Cypress neighborhood of Houston. The Cypress neighborhood is about 25 miles outside of the downtown urban core. And I was successfully able to ride in an unsupervised Robotaxi with my good friend, Robert Brown. Really good experience. We had some hiccups with the ride, and not to promote Road to Autonomy here, we will be releasing a video on that ride because we had an interesting incident that happened. Fully unsupervised, great, and I had to put my inspector hat on when I was there. And this goes back to David Moss again. I counted the cleaners on the back of the Model Ys and counted 24 Robotaxis getting ready to launch.
Well, first of all, when you build up and said, and where did I get? I thought you were going to end up with, and I caught that at a Whataburger, which is, our Texas favorite spot in terms of to spot Tesla robotaxis. In terms of Robert Brown, like, what is he going to admit that that he was impressed by a autonomous vehicle that did not have LiDAR on it? And I know a lot of these guys are, very pro LiDAR. Tesla can't do it without LiDAR. Did he admit that it was a good ride?
He did, and he commentated the video. So we did a video inside of there, and he was a great commentator on it.
All right, good. Always truth then from Robert. So, a lot of vehicles there. I will say that, like, I don't like the fact that, no offense to David Moss, but like, you shouldn't like have to like get a tip on where to get the unsupervised. If you're quote unquote active in a market, you should be able to go anywhere within the footprint and be able to get an unsupervised. Did you try and do that? Rather than using your special tips from David Moss, did you try just to get one of these things in a different part of the ODD?
Yes, it was impossible. Didn't get it. You saw the screenshots. You saw the screenshots. I shared them with you. We were texting when I was there.
I know, but our podcast listeners that don't see the screenshots that you send to me.
Oh, Walt and I are friends. To the listeners, you could be friends of friends, but text messages stay between friends unless you're the Chinese and you hack and you steal my phone.
And if you're going to Houston, contact Grayson. He'll give you those special locations in Houston where you can get your unsupervised taxi. I mean, look, that is like, not ideal, right? But again, I think they are adding, Tesla that is adding cars, at some level of pace. They're making a lot of cars. There's a lot of noise on Twitter about the cybercabs that are coming off the line. So it's positive that you're able to get unsupervised, but I'm gonna be on the side of those that are kind of on the hater side and be like, well, when you're like precisely having to go to a location to get an unsupervised, it doesn't quite count as much.
I want to point out a few things. One, the area that it was running in was odd. It was in a suburban area. Obviously, I get the Tesla service center was there. And in the video, you'll see what we experienced. Very odd service area, very limited, not much to do. And it should be readily available to get anywhere. The Waymo, I was able to get all over Austin. No problem on that. There was a common trait between the Tesla unsupervised robotaxi and the Waymos that we rode around in. They both drove like Houstonians. They were fast and they were aggressive. Completely different drive than what we experienced in other markets.
Oh, Houstonians. I thought you said Estonians. Someone from Houston is a Houstonian or a Houstonian?
I don't know.
Do you live in a house or a house? Which one do you live in, Grayson? A house or a house?
Well, you would have to ask Sam Houston. I mean, that was a whole. When we were driving next to the bot truck on the way up to Dallas, there is this probably 200 or 300 foot statue of Sam Houston on the side of the highway. I said, what the heck is this? So a lot of interesting stuff. It's amazing when you don't have zoning laws what you can do in a city.
So what were the wait times like for Waymo for you in Houston?
It was awesome. So Robert went in to get some food. I said, come on, we got to go. 3 minutes. 3 minutes to 5 minutes. Very, very short wait times. And it was a city. Chris Gerdes pointed this out to me at a panel we did a few weeks ago in Detroit, is we got the looks. Houston, whoa, what's that? We're in San Francisco, Austin, it kind of just blends in. Houston, we were getting the looks of, what is that?
Well, look, I was told that Autonomy had these long wait times and that was going to limit its ability to take share. 3 minutes. And did they deliver on the 3 minutes when it was predicted, unlike many Uber pickups that I get sometimes?
They did. It was completely flawless.
Okay, so 3 minutes is enough. 3 minutes is enough. So, for those on Twitter, they're like, oh, wait times are too long. 3 minutes. Is that good enough for you? For a driverless clean car that has been recently cleaned. Where's the depot? Did you find the depot there, Grayson?
We could not, unfortunately, find the depot. We went to two neighborhoods, and I'll just say Houston gets rough. Oh boy, Houston gets rough if you go into the wrong neighborhood. So we were unsuccessfully able to find it. We did uncover a large depot, which we do not know the ownership of yet because it's still pending a transaction, in an area that we would suspect would be very good for Waymo. I would assume, I don't know, the size of two Costco's, fully secure, but we did not see a primary depot, nor did we see a satellite depot.
All right, good to know. Okay, let's move on to a different Uber partner, WeRide, but more specifically China. So China, our friends in China, suspended new autonomous vehicle permits after 200 Baidu Apollo Go robotaxis simultaneously froze in Wuhan on March 31st. In this case, and I think showed video of this, I think I had it as my backdrop one of these weeks, they caused crashes, and some passengers were stranded up to 2 hours. I don't know how you get stranded for 2 hours, like call an Uber or a Didi. Anyway, the reported cause was Baidu engineers pushed a stop command. This is what they claim, right? This was in Wuhan, and so this is what they claim, that Baidu engineers pushed a stop command to collect data, and that triggered the cascade that happened. So this was like a systems issue, not a perception or planning issue. Again, source of information is what it is. Anyway, they got all these AV companies together and demanded self-inspections. And now basically, this doesn't mean things are shut down, right? Pony, WeRide, they're still operating there. That just means they're not adding to the fleet. So, in this kind of race that I'm very pro-American on, Waymo is the leader. Like, look, they're stopping growth in these market with these devices. For those companies themselves, does it really matter? Not really. I mean, like Didi is pretty cheap, I think, to ride there. I think, I know WeRide would definitely like to expand their market outside of China, and it's more important to get into Europe and figure out some way to get into the United States. So, but it's never good if you're limited on adding cars in a market where you're operating service in terms of continuing to develop the product.
I want to know, did the failure come from an automated mart? That's what we need to know. Did it emerge from an automated mart? That we'll know. What we do know, the Chinese government, the CCP, is taking a heavy-handed approach to automated regulation on the mainland. And Hong Kong, let's not forget they control Hong Kong, while rapidly exporting the technology to the world. And they're building, which I have coined, the Autonomous Belt and Road Initiative. And we need to see what is the reaction from European regulators, what is the reaction from the UAE for this incident, and if this incident that we saw on the mainland of China occurs again, does that, if you want to say, stunt the growth of their exporting? It's something to watch.
I don't know. We'll see. It's a curious situation. My guess is there's more to it than we're getting told. But again, like in this kind of, like for me in telco was the race to 5G, and in the race to autonomy, Waymo's still cranking cars out, in the U.S. and hopefully, more so in Europe as we kind of progress into 27. Unfortunately, we didn't get, Google just reported, we didn't get an update, on the call about the number of cars on the road. I think we got some updates in terms of cars driven or stuff that we basically trajectory that we already knew. You look at that other bets section, I think there's a lot of things in there. There were some asset sales that were there. So it's hard to see where revenue growth is in other bets, in Waymo, in the profitability of the company. This is, these things are all, I think, challenging to figure out. But, clearly, no, not a bad situation, I think, for Waymo to see some of its Chinese competitors being clipped for a little bit.
It's good for Waymo. At the end of the day, it's very good. And then when Waymo meets with European regulators, they have public data points to point to that they can counter with their insurance safety data. So it's a good counterbalance that could potentially help Waymo expand into Europe, which we do know, which we have covered. Waymo is hiring a regulatory council for the EU.
Actually, let me clarify. There were no new data points in terms of Waymo on that Google call, which is, a little disappointing, but whatever. So China, there's our foreign autonomy desk. We're still kind of bullish about particularly WeRide and some of the opportunities they have outside of China. So I'm not sure that this derails that at all. Specifically, this is a good transition to also WeRide on the foreign autonomy desk, announcing that they're going to work with Lenovo, who I thought made computers. Didn't they buy IBM computers? And they're planning to deploy 200,000 robotaxis over the next 5 years. 200,000. That's a big number. You'll have Lenovo's 81 domain controller built on NVIDIA. So, This is a Chinese technology company using NVIDIA Drive and then the Lenovo AD domain controller. So the car, is Lenovo making the car?
Again, no details to who's going to make the car, no details to who's going to own the asset. What we do know is that WeRide's current Robotaxi fleet size is 1,125, and WeRide and Lenovo are planning to do 200,000 Robotaxis over the next 5 years. Light on details, big on grand ambitions.
But don't you think that Lenovo could be like a contract manufacturer that playing that role, or is that a completely different role that they're playing in this situation?
To me, it's a completely different role. Lenovo's providing computing chip power. Lenovo does the IBM ThinkPads, which are now the Lenovo ones. I don't see Lenovo becoming a contract manufacturer for Robotaxis. I see a Chinese automobile manufacturer entering the space. But the question is, who is going to finance this, since WeRide, one, doesn't have the balance sheet, and two, their business model is not focused on owning the asset.
Great show, Grayson. We got a big week next week on more earnings. I'm in the thick of earnings. Uber's reporting, Aurora's reporting, DoorDash is reporting, Kodiak is reporting, Serve's reporting, Lyft's reporting, Toyota's reporting. So hopefully among all those, we'll get some incremental autonomy information. What do you got stacked up for your week?
This week, no surprise, I'm hitting the road again. I'm going to ride in Robotaxis and visit depots. I'm visiting 2 depots, and unfortunately, the third depot that I wanted to go visit, they said no. I think our audience could probably figure out who that company was, because I was under the guise of security concerns.
Wait a minute. Well, first of all, are you disclosing the location of where you're going, or is this a secret Clousteau, trip?
All I will say is that I am moderating an announcement between 2 companies somewhere. And so there'll be news on that.
Clandestine. Well, I have a pretty good sense of the security thing, because there's only one company, and I've seen this on YouTube, that uses this guise of like, oh, it's a security risk, and then doesn't want people filming in their autonomous vehicles. It's kind of crazy and very red flaggish for sure. If you don't know the name of the company, we will reveal that next week. But I think everyone knows who's like not wanting to talk to or let even people film stuff in their commercially available vehicles, even though no one pays to get in those vehicles.
No, and I will ride in one of those vehicles as I am stopped for security concerns. And oh, don't worry, I'll have a camera and we can discuss it there. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is fully autonomous paid operations. Walt, until next week.